Hi guys, my name is Maria Park and this is Approach to Nerd. And in this episode, we have a good friend of mine from Funimation and beyond, voice actor extraordinaire, Kevin
Oh my goodness.
Connolly.
Hello.
He's extraordinary to me. So,
Oh, thank you.
quick story. He's the first person as an adult I rode an airplane with because I was so terrified. We were going to a convention, remember, this was years ago, and I'd never been on an airplane alone. I'm a military brat, so I was a baby when we traveled, but as an adult I didn't ride airplanes for a long time. And yeah, Kevin offered to sit with me on the plane.
Was that the one? That was the one in Houston, right?
Yeah, that was one in Houston.
That really weird one where
I think they ran out of money.
They ran out of money.
Yeah, they were
and they were like telling us, "Don't worry, your plane is paid for. You'll get your appearance fees. Everything is fine." Because I remember the creator. He said his plan next year was to make a week-long convention, and I was like, "Okay, when you run out of money your first year, you want to do a week? Hey, man, dream big."
Well, I mean, also you saved me twice because I didn't have my debit card with me, and so you actually had to lend me your card for my room too.
That's right.
So much went wrong during that weekend.
That was insane.
Yeah, I had the worst time of my life, but the best because you guys are awesome. But I think that I also cracked my head on the door frame. Somebody opened the door and hit me in the forehead, so ouch. I had to have invisible stitches. It was an interesting weekend. So
it was a weekend.
Aren't always fun, guys.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
So I met Kevin a long time ago. We both did voice-over work for Funimation. Mm-hmm. Do you remember, number one, how you heard about Funimation and what your first role at Funimation was?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, no, totally. It started because when I had finished, I'll go back a couple of years before it real quick. When I did my grad work here in California at UCLA, but I graduated when there was a huge actor strike going on. And so there was no work, and I used to work at a children's theater in San Antonio. So my old boss said, "Well, come back for the summer and teach here, and then you can go back when the strike is over." And I just stayed. And I was in Texas for 8 years after that. So it was a long journey. But I moved to Dallas after a couple of years because I wanted to, my goal was to get into SAG-AFTRA because I heard it was easier to do that in Dallas then go back to California. So I was in Dallas for 4 years, I think it was. And so I had lunch with a friend of mine who I used to work at the children's theater. And she asked me and during this time I had been interested in voiceover because one of not my direct classmate, but in the class behind me was an actor named Vic Trevino, who, if any older fellow geeks and nerds remember a show called Pee-wee's Playhouse, he was Ricardo, the world's strongest man on that. He is still that ripped and buff today. Anyway, he did voiceover work, and I became intrigued of it because of him. And so I've been reading because this was 2000. This was 2001. So we didn't have online classes for voiceover or books, and I found about 5 or 6 books. Anyway, so I've been researching it for about 3 years, and it, in a very roundabout way, I moved to Dallas and started doing theater. And I had lunch with a friend of mine who used to work at the children's theater with me. And she asked me, "So what do you hope to do here in Dallas?" I said, "Well, I want to get my SAG card and I'm looking into voiceover work." And she goes, "Oh, I want to do voiceover work too." I mean, because she was an amazing singer. She used to sing at Disney World in Florida for years and everything. And she said, "Okay, we'll do that." So I got in touch with a gentleman who had agreed to meet with me because he knew my dad's best friend. I mean, it's just the universe just got me in this really weird direction. Who I actually met before I moved to Dallas, named Bob Magruder, who anime fans may know as the narrator from what was that show with Tail in the title of it? He passed away recently a few years ago, but he was a big narrator in anime and that kind of thing. And he had specifically said that he did a one-day voiceover class in Houston. And so I thought, well, I'm going to move to Dallas, got into theater. I'll email him and I'll take his class in Houston. I have lunch with my friend. She says, "I want to learn about voiceover work." Great. 2 days later, she calls me, says, "Kevin, there's this company called Funimation, and I think they do something with voiceover in Japanese cartoons." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so I just called him up. And so I called him up, and I remember, I forget who the talent coordinator at the time was, But I said, hi, I'm just curious what you guys do. And they said, well, yeah, we do English dubs on Japanese cartoons. I said, great. And I said, well, how did you go through an agency, or is there a casting director? They said, oh, just send us your demo and we'll put you on the list. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do that. And hung up thinking, I don't know what a demo is. But because I had emailed Bob Magruder saying, let me know when your next Houston class is. I've got some friends in Houston. I'll go for a weekend and I'll take the class. And he says, Kevin, I have a class in Dallas in a week. Send me $100, you're in. So I write my check, there it is. So that Saturday, after I called Funimation, I'm in the lobby of this talent agency with this class. There's about 8 of us in a semicircle. And it was kind of like high school, where you introduce yourself like, hi, my name's Kevin. I'm a classically trained actor, but I've never done voiceover, Well, then 2 seats down, this guy says, hi, my name is Mike McFarland. For the last 5 years, I've been an actor, writer, director, and producer for Funimation, and I'm looking to branch out into other areas of voiceover. And I remember I was like, oh my gosh, this is the person to talk to, but how do I do it and not make it look like I'm flirting with them or something, So, all morning we're reading copy. And again, this class was mainly focused on commercials and industrials and that kind of thing. E-learning wasn't a big thing. So it was just kind of your traditional, early 2000 voiceover world. And I remember going to lunch. We all went our separate ways. And I came back and I was reading a book. And I hear this voice say, so you're from San Antonio? And I look up and it's Mike McFarland. And I say, yeah. I said, yeah, I just moved here. I'm doing some theater and I met Bob through my dad's friend and I'm hoping to learn. And I try to be real nonchalant about it. I remember saying, so you're with that company, was it Fun Times or Funimate or something? He says, oh yeah, Funimation. And I say, it's so funny because I just found out about your company. And I called up and they just said to send a demo in. And I said, sure, but obviously I have no idea what goes on a demo, but I'm hoping to learn here at Bob's class. And he kind of rolled his eyes and he said, oh yeah, the audition list. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He says, the audition list is a 2-year wait. Like, well, I've got 2 years to figure out what goes on a demo, apparently. He says, and this was the magical moment. This is where the universe and Mike's generosity. He said, you know what? I like what you're doing. You've got you know how to use your voice. You're obviously a trained actor. That's a big key. Give me your contact info and I'll bring you in for something. I was like, oh, that'd be great, And 2 weeks later, I was in my first session on Case Closed. And now I'm blanking on the name of the character. And I remember leaving that day thinking, I will never work in this industry again, because he only, as we try to get through, at least the average now is about 25 to 30 lines an hour. It took me 1 hour and 15 minutes to do 11 lines. Now, given, there were timing issues and script issues, which I have come to learn is kind of the norm. There's always something to fix. But I was thinking, don't pay me. I suck at this, But no, that was it was a guy who he was trying to call off his wedding or something like that. I don't know, but it was Case Closed. And that was the first thing I ever did.
Hartley Hartwell.
Hartley Hartwell, yes.
Hartley Hartwell.
That was another story I tell that. So the second time he called me in, I was surprised he ever called me in. Again, I thought, I'm done. But this led to my second time where I thought, I'm done. I'm never working again. He called me in for Bear Player number 2. I do remember that. And so I just did the lines. And then he said, Kevin, I'm going to have you audition for a character. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be great. Mm-hmm. And now, traditionally, again, I haven't been at Funimation in 15 years. I don't know. I'm assuming auditions are done by email. You do them at home now. But at the time, auditions used to be held on a Friday night. And there'd be a book and with all the main characters. And you pick 2 or 3 you think you fit. And then, of course, you go in, you read, the director may give you somebody else or whatever, and then you leave. But you never do anything to picture. So we watched a bit of an episode with Harley, or Heiji Hattori, as he's, the original name. And we worked on the voice for a few minutes, and I read a couple of lines. Now, this is the part I didn't know was different. He said, great, let's go to this other booth and record to picture. That was a big difference. So I recorded 2 scenes, 2 little quick snippets of scenes, I should say, and I was done. And 2 weeks later, I get a call saying, we need you to come in to record 2 episodes. You've been cast as Harley Hartwell. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. So I go in, and it must have been a Monday or Tuesday, because the days are going to be important here in a second. And it was with Chris Kazin, who I'd never worked with before. I was so nervous. He's one of my good friends now. He's a fantastic actor and director. And he sits me down and says, so yeah, you're going to be Harley Hartwell. So, are you an actor? I mean, I said, well, yeah, no, I'm classically trained, but I haven't done a lot of this before and everything, And this is the biggest lesson I'll say right now before I continue is if you book a job that you have not yet recorded, ask to listen to your audition. Or if you did 2 different takes, say, replay the one that you picked me for this part for. Here's why. So when I initially did the voice with Mike, he's a teenager, so I got to raise up my tone a little bit and get back in the upper palate a little bit. This is Harley Hartwell, not Kevin down here. But I didn't quite remember that. And so I was working with Chris on the voice, and he said, okay, I like that voice right there. That's the good, let's keep him in that realm. But immediately in my head, I thought, that's a little lower than I think what I did in my audition, but you're the director. I trust you. So we start recording. We've got a 2-parter we got to do. And I think it carried over into the next day, which was going to be a Wednesday. Now, at the same time, I was supposed to do another 2-parter. No, it was a Monday, because I was supposed to do another 2-parter with Mike, Wednesday and Thursday. So I'm recording with Chris all day long, and he's directing me, and I'm having fun. And these were my teachers. I'm learning a lot because I had never done dubbing before, and as you know, I mean, my head was just like, wait, what? I've got to pat the head and do this and act, but timing and all this craziness. So we record the first day. It's fine. We record the next day, and I remember I'm looking out the glass window, and I see Mike come in, and he and Chris start, that talking with each other and pointing at me and laughing and whatever, making fun of me and ha ha ha, whatever. And again, still in the back of my head, though, I'm thinking, I don't know this is the right voice or not. And so Chris gets on the mic and on the playback or talkback and says, hey, Kevin, Mike needs you to record something real quick today. So pop out and go record like 3 lines with him, and then we'll take lunch and come back to this 2-part. I said, okay, great. So I pop over into Mike's studio, and I read, it's a Harley Hartwell line, and I read it in the voice I've been doing now for 2 days with Chris that I've been concerned about. And immediately Mike says, hey, Kevin, no, remember the voice is higher, he's younger. I'm like, oh, shoot. I knew it. So I did the voice that we had initially done for my audition, which was different than what I did with Chris. And I thought, that's it. I'm fired. I'm screwed. So I go back and I say, hey, he just had me do a higher voice that I think I did for my audition. He says, well, Kevin, he cast you, but I love what you're doing here. So, he's got to, I'm going to say he's going to follow my lead on this because I think what you're doing is good. I'm like, okay. I trust everyone here. So come Thursday morning, I had a day job working for a jewelry company, and I was supposed to do an early sale. And then my boss, I had a great boss who was also in theater, and he would let me go and do all this recording. And so I was supposed to go in at 11, and I get a call late Wednesday night from the casting director or the talent coordinator saying, hey, Kevin, is there any way you can come in at 9? I'm like, yeah, let me see. So I called my boss, and he said, yes, we'll figure it out. Fine, go do work. So I get there at 9, and I knock on Mike's studio door, and it's like a horror movie that slowly creaks open, and it's all dark inside. And I'm like, what's going on? And so I peek around, and I see Chris. I said, hey, is Mike here yet? I'm running a tad late, but I'm supposed to be doing. And he says, Kevin, actually, you're with me today. Oh, why is that? And he says, well, when you did your audition, did you record to picture? I said, yeah. He says, well, what happened is that Mike had you audition, he loved you in the part, and he cast you in his head in that moment. So what you recorded actually went out on a DVD, and the engineers came back to what we've done and said the voice is wrong. So we have to record these 2 episodes today so they can be mixed tonight and then FedEx to Cartoon Network tomorrow. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so now, as I said earlier about the first episode of Case that I did where there was script problems and timing problems, we had fixed all that. So I spent 9 hours listening to myself do the line and then just repeating it in a higher tone, in the Harley tone, and did that all day long and got it all done. And I mean, what had happened is it's, you know, it was my fault for not asking, because you got to keep in mind, well, as you know, Chris and Mike and any director is having to handle multiple actors, writers, other producers, scheduling. I mean, there's so much information that they have to process and they have to make decisions on that I simply just, this one little tiny character fell through the cracks, you know. So so now anytime, in fact, I just last year I was doing a live action dub, and it had been about 2 months between series. And I said, hey, do you have my audition or the last thing? And they didn't have it right away. We spent 20 minutes looking for it just to make sure I had it right. I always ask now. But anyway, that was I remember driving home after that thinking, they'll just recast me. They'll just recast Harley and find someone who can do the job. But thankfully, Mike and Chris, who are absolutely amazing directors and people, were very generous, and we worked through it. So I'm babbling away. So there's that long answer.
No, I mean, I love it because this is real. We get a lot of questions about how to get into voice acting, and it's good to see what happens once you are into voice acting.
Yes.
So
they, as you know, studios like working with professionals. You know, and so you have to learn how to be a professional. And I had to do a lot of learning over those first few months, because again, my experience was theater. I mean, and some TV film, and you know, you have to be, well, for any area of acting, as you know, you have to be prepared when you go in.
Yeah.
And every director at Funimation for my first year there were my teachers. And so I learned so much from them about how to be a better dubbing actor. And, you know, and I would watch, I mean, I briefly directed a series called Peach Girl. And
I remember that. I think I did 2 very bitchy characters in that. Episodic characters in Peach Girl.
Yeah, I did the last 10 episodes of that series, and I'd like to direct again, I think it was. But, you know, I had some trouble with some actors that I thought, you know what, this is why I'm proud to be professional, because this is not what I would do. And, you know, because again, you know, for me, it's, in any sense of the word, yes, you are a creative actor, but you are selling a product. You know, why should somebody spend money on you? What do you offer that people will say, yes, I will pay you, and I'm going to pay a studio and an engineer to work with you, you know? So that's kind of my philosophy on that.
So we'll talk a little bit later on that comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So you've done some very interesting series that I know you probably don't remember because
I probably don't.
The nature of voice acting.
Yes.
But do you remember your audition for Full Metal Alchemist?
I do. Actually, I do remember that, because I played Master Sergeant Kain Fuery in that. I didn't actually read for Fuery. I read for Scar. Is that right? There was a guy, Scar.
I think there was Scar, yeah.
And then there was a Scientist A. And the voice I did for Fuery was really close to what I did for Scientist A. And when Mike and Colleen heard it, said, no, that's the voice for Fuery. So we'll just pop. So yeah, I never actually read for Fuery. But they, you know, which can happen. You might read for something and they'll put you in something else. So that's how I got Fuery, was just reading for a Scientist, you know.
That's pretty common, I think, in voice.
Yeah.
Okay. So at one point, I mean, you said you got into directing. How did you get into directing? Were you offered it? Did you ask?
I asked. I said, you know what? I remember I reached out to who was that? Is it Justin Cook was the head of, I guess he's still the head of production.
Yes.
I asked Mike first. I asked Mike, I said, hey, if I was interested in really, well, first I wanted to just to sit and watch, because you know what, you probably know, you're in a different mindset when you're an actor being directed. I wanted to sit next to the director and really focus on what he or she was doing with the actor first. And that was the process at the time. I said, hey, if I was interested in directing, how would I express that? And I remember Mike said, we'll let Justin know, and then we'll probably have you. In fact, I sat with Mike for a couple of sessions, and I sat with Colleen for a couple of sessions, and both very different directing styles. And then Caitlin Glass, who had just started directing as well, asked me to, they call it assistant directing, but she had to go to a convention. And so I stepped in, and I was listed as assistant, but basically I just directed a session or two for her. I think it was on Suzuka. And so then, and then they gave me Peach Girl. And that was definitely a trial by fire, because I directed that at Okatron 3000, Chris Sabat's studio. They were renting a booth from him.
I know he might have expanded since I've been there. That was a very nice studio.
Very nice studio. But yeah. what that presented was an interesting challenge. It's never occurred to me, because when I directed, I remember they gave me a list, especially another thing for any aspiring voice actors. In fact, I was just talking to a young lady from my class who she's a good actress and wants to do anime, and she just emailed them the demo. My thing with that is, there's nobody receiving that demo. There's not a person dedicated to listening to demos. That's part of the problem. But to add to that, I was given a list of 300 on-call actors just in Dallas-Fort Worth alone. So, there's a ton of talent already with them. So you have a lot to break through if you want to get involved. It's changing now because of all the home studio recording. In fact, I'm hoping to reach out and see if I can maybe get reconnected with Funimation, but that's a whole other thing. But most of those actors were closer to the studio, to the Funimation's original studio, which was in a Bank of America building for many years.
It was in Frostbank.
Frostbank, that's right, yeah. Frostbank.
On the second floor or third floor.
Yeah, they had a couple of floors, and then they moved then they moved to their own space. But most of the actors were closer to that location. So when I tried to reach out to get actors to fill parts for episodic parts, I had people turning me down because it was too far to drive. Because, as you know, anime is not a high paying. Hate to burst the bubble, but it is one of the least paying voiceover gigs in the industry. And so I had a lot of actors who say, I think Tara, the talent coordinator, would say, yeah, they won't come out that far, because it barely pays
not
for
worth
gas.
It, gas
it's
wise.
Not, yeah.
Because they were on a loop too. I can't remember the name of the loop, but I lived in Arlington at the time, and they were in Fort Worth, so it was like 40-minute drive. I remember I had a gig with you. I had to cancel last minute, and I felt so bad, but I had a kidney infection, and I couldn't sit in my car. And my roommate, who at the time was not a very compassionate person, refused to drive me to this gig. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it was the only time in my entire voiceover career that I had to literally the same day, which is a no-no. I knew it. A no-no. I even told Tara, he's going to kill me, but I cannot get there.
Oh, I get it. No, that's an okay excuse. I had an actor, I can't remember his name, but he had a secondary job that kept him out late at night, and I was supposed to have an 8-hour recording day with him the next day. He was one of the leads, and just said, "Yeah, I'm really tired. I had a late night last night. I'm not coming in today."
Did they recast him?
No, because they'd already filmed. It was part of a series. He'd already done a number of episodes. They couldn't do it. So.
See, that's crazy.
That's a no-no. And like, unless you're dying, you do not miss work, because the biggest explanation here for that, is like, look, there are other people hired around you. You have the engineer, you have the director. If you're on a TV or film set, that's $100,000 a minute you'd be losing. Yep. If you decided to say, like I remember watching, I'm a huge Star Trek fan.
I'm a Trekkie too.
Okay, so what was the episode? I'm guessing at this, but I bet if you go back and listen and watch it, the episode where Geordi was on a ship by himself, and it was his mom was in the episode as well.
Is that the one where he could see again?
I think so. I know
this. I know TNG.
Go back and listen to him. I think that LeVar Burton has had a heavy cold at the time because his voice sounds very stuffed, but you can't miss work. You know.
Well, he was also doing Reading Rainbow, wasn't he? At the same time, I can't remember if he did that.
That might have been. I think the seasons 1 through 3 he was doing that, and then it got canceled.
Okay.
After that, but I have a LeVar Burton story I'll tell in a minute.
I mean, nuts now.
But yeah, no, go back.
It's not hero worship, and I know some episode title. I'm just trying to. It's
but go back and listen to his voice. Like I bet he sounds stuffed up with a cold. So I think, but we got to work through it. And now as a voice actor, it can be a little different because if your voice doesn't match to what you've done earlier, then obviously. Now, I had a situation where I got extremely sick and I lucked out. So I've had one leading role in my life so far. It was a little series called Rumbling Hearts. Oh. And I had a full 8-hour day, 2 episodes I had to record. And about 4 a.m. that morning, I woke up and a terrible cold. I was stuffed up, sneezing, coughing. I'm not one to just call in and cancel. So I went to Rite Aid. I got my Theraflu. I got we got the zinc, anything I could get. And I drove out to the studio and was drinking the stuff and taking everything I could, and I went to the table and there was that little kitchen area and I sat in the back. Yeah, a little break room. And Tyler was it Tyler Walker? That was like Tyler Walker was the director that day, and he comes in and says, "Dude, I didn't want to leave you hanging. I'm sick as all get out, and I didn't know what to do, but I didn't want to leave you hanging." And he said, "Okay, Kevin, that's okay, because in these 2 episodes, your character has a cold." I'm like, oh my gosh! So I mean, like every hour we would be Lysoling.
You're so lucky.
I lucked out so bad. I mean, I was really. I mean, my body. I was tired. I was achy, but we got through it. We Lysoled everything about every half hour and every hour and a half, and so yeah, that's the only time I would say. But unless you're on your deathbed as an actor, you do not miss work. That's plain and simple.
That was I will say one benefit for the one time, unfortunately, that was with you, is it actually led to my medical diagnosis. Some of that.
Well, that's good. That's important.
Kind of went hand in hand. But I didn't even realize my back felt like somebody had dropped rocks in it. To even touch my chair, I'm not exaggerating. It was horrendous. Yeah. I literally felt like I couldn't get something off of my lower back. So right after I called in, I went to the doctor. They ran a bunch of tests, and then a week later, I got my endometriosis. PCOS.
Well, at least you figured that out.
So yeah, and I didn't even realize it could get to that point. So you learn a lot of things about yourself when you're sick.
You do. Yeah.
But it just means I missed a very good opportunity because I think you started a little bit before I did, and so I had done episodic characters in Walla, and I think this was the first time I had like a bigger character. So I was already like, for me, that was just a bad day. It was just a bad day all around. Oh, yeah. All right. So then we transitioned to LA. So why did you decide to go to California?
Well, I mean, that was always my goal when that's why I did my grad work out here. I remember being told years ago that, go to school where you want to work as an actor, so if you want to be a Broadway actor or, as a Broadway singer, you train in New York. If you want to do just great, solid, amazing dramatic theater, you go to Chicago or Minneapolis. If you want to do TV film, you go to LA. And that's still my goal today. Now I'm trying to get in Starfleet shape with all the Star Trek shows they're doing now. So after about 4 years in Dallas, I decided that it was time. And so I moved. I took a year off and I taught. I was teaching at a college in San Antonio for a year. And then I packed up my bags and I came out to LA, and I contacted Bang Zoom. Now, again, I took advantage of the fact I'd been at Funimation and said, "Hey, I've been at Funimation," and they knew my name. In fact, they big fans of Fuery, so that really gave me a couple of extra points, So they took me in pretty quick in that aspect. And I think one of the first gigs I ever did for them was, it might have been League of Legends, because I'm the original voice of Vladimir in League of Legends. I think that's one of the first jobs I did with them. I might have done a couple little anime characters with, just some additional voices, but Vladimir was probably the biggest thing that hit me next, because I did that my first year I was there. Yeah, and that actually, I've lost that part twice now, which has sucked.
How'd you lose the part?
Well, I did the voices, and Vladimir, I think a lot of the characters initially have all these terrible puns as their dialogue. So stuff like, "Go ahead, be negative, you'll be just my type. The clot thickens," stuff like that. So about a year after I did the initial recording, I got an email from Bang Zoom saying, "Hey, Vladimir's getting a new costume that people can buy, and there may be some new dialogue. Are you available somewhere in this 2-week period to maybe come in and record?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally, sure," right? Nothing. Didn't hear crickets. So about 6 months later, I started looking I was putting my website together, my first website, and I thought, well, maybe I can find some clips of people playing Vladimir, and I could say, "Hey, do you mind if I link your gameplay where you can hear me to my website?" So I'm just Googling on YouTube or searching on YouTube for Voices of League Vladimir, and there's this heading that says Voices. It's actually Voices of League Vladimir. So I play it. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And there was a couple things I realized when I played it. Is one, it was our original audio. It's like they just pulled the original studio audio. It's just our dialogue. No sound effects, no efforts, not just the dialogues, our laughs, and our grunts. That's it. And then the second thing I realized, that it wasn't me. It was a completely different voice actor. Much deeper voice. The lines were much more serious. What I came to find out years later, and I forget who told me this, but and this can happen basically at any company. They had hired a different producer for all the costume changes, and apparently this producer said, "You know what? I hate the puns, and so we're going to rewrite the dialogue and recast everybody." So I know a number of actors have expressed their frustration of being recast. Cut to 10 years later. This was in this must have been 2018, maybe 2019. I get an email from my agent out of nowhere, who hasn't contacted me in a couple of years, saying, "Hey, Kevin, somebody called asking about your union status." Now, I joined SAG-AFTRA by then. And I said, "Yeah, no, I'm paid up. I'm good to go. I wonder what it is." And then about 2 weeks after that, I get an email from a casting director here in LA. And he says, "Hey, Kevin, my name's, I can't remember his name. I'm so-and-so with this casting office, and we're doing this new mobile card game, and Vladimir's going to be in it." I was like, "Oh." And he said, "Our client would love for you to read for it." Now, in my head, I'm thinking, you want me to read for the character I've already played? Oh, okay. But of course, I'm like, of course, I'd love to read it. Of course, absolutely. So I get the audition. Now, keep in mind, as you know, because it's a union job, much, much higher pay. I mean, a huge, huge pay increase compared to what the non-union original job paid. And it's, the usual audition. There's a picture of him and a description and the lines, but the very last note at the bottom of the page, in essence, like I'm paraphrasing here, said, "Vladimir is a character in League of Legends. We're not looking for a voice match to the original actor, but the essence of his performance." And I'm like, but I am the original, and I didn't book it. I didn't get the job. I tried to make myself sound different, but so it went to somebody else who got a much higher paycheck than I did for the groundwork that no, I'm kidding. But that happened.
That is funny that someone's playing, in their opinion, a better version
of me, basically. So, maybe that's why I'm single. I don't know.
That's a therapy thing there.
But now, on the flip side, I have replaced somebody in a show. There was a show for the very short-lived company Illumitoon.
Oh, I remember them.
Remember
They were
Looney
in
Tune?
Dallas too. Yeah.
No, they set up at the Red Studios of, I forget what company it was, because they had that huge filming studio in Fort Worth.
Yeah, that's what it was. Some people from Funimation, I think, went and
Right, had
invested.
created it, and
Yeah,
then they found that great space. But it was a show called Biddix.
I remember that.
Remember Biddix?
Yeah.
That Eric Vale was writing, directing, and starring in. He was the lead character. And I mean, I won't. I keep babbling. The gist of it is that he called me up and asked me if I was in town, and I said, yeah. I said, well, no, I was not in town. I was actually visiting my parents at the time. And he said, yeah, we've got this actor playing. I don't know who the actor was, playing my brother. And he's, you know what? It's a classic case of where he auditioned really, really well, but the dubbing, acting in dubs, is a double challenge, because you have to be this character, but you also have to have timing. You have to match the flaps. They can't just digitally squeeze
Can't become
you.
monotone when the
Yeah.
beats start.
It's two jobs in one, and he was struggling with it. And I said, I'm out of town for a week, man. I'm visiting my folks. I just got to San Antonio. I said, okay, never mind. I never called. We're fine. We'll just work with them. And then 2 days later, he called and said, yeah, Kevin, when are you back in town? And he says, I'm back Monday. He says, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're just going to wait, because, he's a great actor, but it's the dubbing world can really trip people up. And this particular actor was just not able to quite get the gist of it is. So that's how I got that part. So I've been on both sides of the coin there. I mean, that's just what happened. But boy, I wanted to play Vladimir again so badly. And I was just like, how do I not be myself? There we are.
Yeah. Voiceovers are tricky that way. Sometimes you can get recast as a voice actor, and it's not even a performance thing. It could literally be somebody needed work and they were friends with the director and they just re-record those lines.
We see that in TV all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just reading about people who've been replaced in shows either because scheduling conflicts or they just interviewed. I have to go back. I've never actually watched. I watched like the last season of Game of Thrones with friends, but the woman who's the dragon who what's her name?
I'm not a Game of Thrones person, but
okay, but you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
the with the blonde hair
with a D.
Right.
That.
So she wasn't in the initial pilot. There was another actress who had that part, and they replaced her with the one that's well known and loved. Daenerys, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's finally spoken out about what happened. And again, I'm paraphrasing here, but she said, you know what? I got the script. I actually turned it down. But I did the pilot and I knew it wasn't right for me. And I knew that I was not going to continue with it. And they recast her, and she said, now it's allowed me to do the things I want to do that fulfill me as an artist, so. Or like I had a great voice and speech teacher who was going to be a guest star on a sitcom. No, it wasn't her. It was one of her friends was going to be a guest star in a sitcom, which pays higher than a co-star. If you ever see the credits on TV, guest star, co-star, there is a huge pay difference between those two listings. And she did the read through, the table read. The next day they said we no longer require her, because she found out later, apparently one of the producers said she looks way too much like my ex-girlfriend. Can't do it.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's so many elements where, or if someone just doesn't like you, or you know what, I could think I'm perfect for a part, but you know what, it's the director's vision. If they might hear your voice and say, nope, that's not what I hear in my head for this character. There's been a few shows that I really, really wanted so badly, but then when I hear it, I'm like, yeah, I would have sucked in that. I would have been terrible in that part. They picked the right choice for that, and it wasn't me. So it's all over the place. That's acting.
Yeah. So what do you think about companies? Because I know that a few that we both worked for have they don't have an issue with it, but they don't prefer it if you're a fan of the series that you're currently auditioning for or reading for.
I don't, I'm not sure, to be honest with you, because I mean, I'll be completely honest. I didn't really know what anime was when I started. It was an acting job to me. I mean, looking back now, I realized I did watch anime when I was a kid, like Battleship Yamamoto and that kind of thing. But I because so then to me, everything I worked on was like, I've never heard of this show before. This is interesting. Now, Bang Zoom, companies out here work a little differently. And I'm guessing at most of this, where Funimation is a completely in-house company, so they license a product. So they're handling not only the English dub, but they're doing all the packaging, all the marketing, all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Compared to out here, we're like Bang Zoom, if I understand correctly, they don't license anything. Other companies license, like Bandai and Aniplex. Well, Aniplex produces it, but other
Studio
companies,
Alchemist.
yeah, other companies will license it. And Bang Zoom, all they do is just the voiceover stuff, and then they just give it back, which is why you'll often see on a release that even though it may say Bandai, it was recorded at Bang Zoom. So that's a whole different thing. They're hired, like when when we would audition at Funimation, the directors would do the casting. That doesn't happen out here. There is a casting director at Bang Zoom, where directors, they don't have any say. Their only job is to direct who has been approved by whoever licensed the show. So I don't think there's any way to say you're a fan of the show or not. Here, it's just the job. As the studio says, okay, well, we've been told to do this, and then two, on top of that, at Bang Zoom, which is terrifying to me some of the time, is that a lot of the time one of the producers from whoever licensed it will be sitting next to the director and the engineer, which doesn't happen at Funimation.
No.
At least as far as I know. Like, there was one time I did a live action dub on a film I'm very proud of called Masquerade, and I'm not a great dubbing actor. I mean, I'm the 10-take wonder. I mean, I've got to get a few takes in to get it right, But I'll tell you, Maria, this day one, it was me, the director, Wendy Lee, and I forget the engineer's name, but there were two producers from the company. So they're literally approving every line. So back to your question of, being a fan of the series or not, out here, doesn't matter. It's, they picked you to do the job. And I was hitting every line perfectly. I mean, 4-hour session just whizzed by, and I was like, I'm the 1-take wonderkind here today,
Fear's a motivator.
So then apparently these two producers went back saying, oh my gosh, we cast the right person. You've got to see him. He's amazing. So the next day there were 4 producers in the booth with the director and engineer. And I couldn't get a line right to save my life. I was so embarrassed. And it was, it was terrifying. But I mean, again, at Funimation, I haven't been at Funimation in 15 years, but it was never for me, because again, I just didn't know what the hell I was working on. I would just go in and say, oh, okay, that looks cool. Oh, it's a space show. Great. It's space, like Star Trek. Should we talk Star Trek? No Star Trek. Okay. So yeah, out here it's like, and I've done some stuff for Netflix where, again, it's the same thing. Netflix has licensed the show, and they've just hired a company just to do the voiceover work, to like saying, okay, this is what we're working on today. Great. Okay. Then they send it out. We're done. Move on to the next show. So yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I know that a lot of companies probably now do simulcasting, so I think that's a whole other experience.
I'd heard about that. So yeah, that's something that again, that's probably going to be more a Texas thing, because of any company that does in-house licensing compared to
probably Funimation.
Funimation, maybe Sentai, I guess, might even do that. But yeah, that's just not possible out here. So
you're learning a lot about California voiceovers versus Texas.
Yeah.
So yeah. So do you think there's still voiceover opportunities in Canada? I know New York kind of has a few shows. Like, I think they do Pokemon, but I don't think they're really big in the anime voiceovers. But I know they used to have Ocean and a bunch of other groups in Canada, and I was just
right. I have no clue. I've never actually researched any of the Canadian studios. I mean, someone told me years ago that Funimation, I think, produces 85. At least this was maybe up to 10 years ago. Produced 85% of all anime dubs, because there's like 5 studios in Dallas now, I think. And so I think they pretty much, and now that Sony bought Funimation as well, and they bought Crunchyroll, apparently, though I don't know what kind of impact that's going to have on licensing. But yeah, I don't know of any shows, at least that have been said, oh yeah, they dubbed this up in Canada. I just now my bigger question is, now that the studios are being forced to, work remotely with actors, if that's something that might continue on after we get clear of this crazy pandemic stuff going on, because the last few jobs I've done for Bang Zoom, I've done here at home. I mean, I had to upgrade my system a little bit to get to that level. And one of the engineers is a good friend of mine, and he says, yeah, some actors have had to spend a couple $1,000s to get the proper equipment, because as I said at the beginning, it comes down for me, what quality of product, you're offering, especially if you're a home voice actor. If you're on your little snowball mic in your closet, you can't compare that to a studio with $1,000 Sennheiser microphone and proper sound. I had to work my butt off to get to where I felt confident saying, yes, I can record at a level that will be worthy enough for, as they say, broadcast quality work is the phrase I've always used. Like I had to get hardwired Ethernet, connection for internet. I had to upgrade to solid state drives so I could run Source Connect now on one track, and then they were showing me the picture on Skype, and make sure my system can run all that at the same time, because obviously there's going to be lag time no matter what, and so we don't get as many lines done, but you have to still work as efficient as possible. And so, but yeah, back to my thing is will that continue afterwards? That it is working as long as you have the
equipment,
the upper echelon of equipment.
I think some studios also give you a home recording kit too, depending on which studio.
Well, actually, there was a video game studio. Because as one question, maybe I don't know if you ever talked about this, where, I've had anime fans come up to me and say, well, why can't I just record from my closet at home? Before all the stay-at-home, situation that we have now. And I said, well, you got to think about it. He says, look, you're talking about a show that has multiple cast members. Every recording space has its own room tone or room sound. So, of course, you want them all to sound the same. This is why, before all this, I would say if you want to work in animation and video games, you have to live where the studios are. You just have to, unless you're a huge name that has a multi-$1,000 home studio that can get that level of quality. So there was a video game company here in LA that they said they sent me an audition, and they said, we know that actors have been building up their home studios, but we really want to keep the sound the same. If we cast you, we will send you a portable recording studio, this box that they said, we can put into your room or something, and you'll record in that, and then we'll pick it up and take it away, so that the sound is the same for everybody. That's a big factor. So I didn't book the job, so I didn't get to experience it. But yeah, so I think some video game companies are doing that. Really interesting. I mean, it's an additional cost, for transport. And I don't know if that's going to them or to the clients. I would say that may stop after we get back to some normalcy with recording. And but again, if you have a great home recording setup, then yeah, you could probably continue with that.
Yeah, that is very true. I think I bought a sound booth like years ago, and that was about $3,000. And then I had a Newman U87 AI, and that was a $3,600 mic. Then you can't just run the microphone. You have to buy an audio interface. You have to have, I think even Adobe now, back in the day, and we're aging. See, we're in our 40s. So back in the day, you could get Sound, Studio and Adobe Audition 3.0, and it didn't break the bank. Now it's a $50 a month, expenditure. Like I literally, just to run Premiere to do my videos and to have the audio, to have the latest Adobe Audition and all of that, it's $56, almost $60 a month.
Yeah, I will say I've been I have an older I've been using Adobe CS6 just because I happen to have it, and I've never really
Felt the need
just
to
for
upgrade.
what I do. I've never needed to upgrade, but I'm having some crashing issues with it now. And I read somewhere recently that Adobe isn't going to crack down on people using older versions, but
they don't support it.
They don't support it. And then some other third-party companies, and I don't know if this is because of plugins or whatever, aren't supporting it either. But I've been introduced to Reaper by a guy I found on YouTube, Mike Delgadio, the Booth Junkie, and I'm still learning it, and messing around with it. But I'm really, and it's $60 if you make $20,000 or less a year for the license.
Yeah, and I know some people that just continuously do the trial on it,
Oh yeah. You can do the trial forever,
forever.
Because you get the full version in the trial. It just pops a message saying, hey, So I thought I was digging it. So I said, yeah, $60, I can do that for lifetime. Sure.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, that's pretty much one payment for the Adobe suite for me.
Exactly. So. Oh, that's crazy.
But yeah, everything is like going up in prices in terms of
that. Yeah.
So what do you hope to happen going forward? I know you're working on your commercial demos. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about commercials and voiceovers.
Commercials are where the money. If you want to earn money and do voiceover, commercials. In fact, I did for the last 2 years. I did the Lego holiday spots, and even non-union. Because it's unprofessional to say how much you make, but I'll just say that I earned from 45 minutes worth of work, half the time of me just saying, Lego, rebuild your world. That's all I said. A couple names. Was half my entire income for 2019. Compared to, and I think it's pretty public knowledge that anime pays anywhere from 35 to maybe $75 an hour. No residuals. You don't get paid if a DVD sells.
Flat rate.
That.
Yep.
Flat rate, the buyout rate, which is pretty much all non-union work. So, though I will say Netflix, and this is how I lost out. I don't know if I was. Well, I think I was in the running. I actually got an audition for Skeletor, for Kevin Smith's He-Man.
Oh,
wow. Well, here's it. Yeah, and I lost out to Mark Hamill. So that's not too bad.
If you're gonna lose to somebody,
and I actually I posted that on Twitter, saying I got to because it was when the cast was announced, because it was initially a non-union show, and then but what nobody knew was that Netflix had negotiated a contract, and so that anything now on Netflix is union only. So if you want to do union, if you want to be on Netflix anime show, you've got to be a union member, plain and simple. And obviously suddenly this, celebrity-filled cast for He-Man and Mark Hamill's Skeletor. And I made I posted on Twitter saying, I got to read for Skeletor about 3 months ago. So for 5 minutes, I was Skeletor. And he responded saying something, I was surprised. He said, Kevin, when a door closes, another one opens, onward and upward, my friend. And I was like, oh my gosh, Mark Hamill. I've been working for an audiobook company. Oh, that was my LeVar Burton story real quick. I got into doing children's audiobooks about 8 years ago with this particular company called Book Buddy Media. And
I've heard of them.
Yeah. So what happens is publishers, mostly educational publishers, because these are sold to schools mainly, will say, hey, these are our books. We need audio versions to be sold to schools. And I remember this was about 4 or 5 years ago. And my the two producers I work with were pretty close, and they said, "Hey, Kevin, Reading Rainbow has hired us." This was when LeVar Burton had restarted the Reading Rainbow project, and they said, "We want to do some. They want us to do some audiobooks." And so usually, what happens especially with educational books, is I'll get the audition. They'll say, read 2 pages out of this book, right? Mm-hmm. But because we're talking different grade levels, because we do pre-K to 12th grade. You have to adjust your pace of how you speak, because we have to consider who's listening, the age range. And they said, so here's the audition, and here are 2 pace samples they want you to listen to. And the first person was a very nice female narrator. It's like, okay, this is pre-K, first grade, so a slower pace. The second pace sample was LeVar Burton. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm having to match LeVar Burton. This is crazy, so that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of
I
fun.
would have loved to hear that take, actually, if that was me.
I think I think I still have it. I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
I've got it somewhere. I save everything. I always save all my audio, just in case. I've got audio from 10 years ago, just in case.
I have
In fact,
from my external drive.
I did a series. This was interesting. It was a series of Jewish religious books, but with Sesame Street characters. And one had Grover in it. And it was interesting because the direction said, we can't have you sound like Grover. Because I'm guessing
copyright infringement.
Well, they must have licensed the character, but I guess because it's only for the print license, I couldn't. So I just tried to do my interpretation of Grover, if you will. And then about 2 years later, the same company came back saying, we've got one new book. And my producer said, Kevin, do you by any chance still have the audio of what you did? And I'm like, yep, sure do, because I save everything. And I pulled up that audio and was able to match that. So save your audio, kids. Save everything.
Yeah. So if you have one last statement to give to prospective voice actors, what would that be?
I've got two, if that's okay.
Yeah.
You have to be a great actor. People forget when they say, oh, it's just reading into a mic. No, it's called voice acting. You have to be not a good actor, a great actor. You have to bring a character to life. And a big motivational one, this was something one of my undergrad acting teachers said, is that your competition is working harder than you. I've heard people say, why can't I just record my own commercial demo? And my response is, so you're telling me that you've never talked with a commercial casting director, you've never talked with a marketing company, you've never written a commercial, but you think you can produce a fantastic commercial demo that people want to say, yes, we're going to cast them from. Great, go for it. See what happens. Your competition is saving up their money for their demo. They're taking those classes. They're filling up that resume showing that I'm serious about this. I want to do this. And this is how, going back to what we said before, you have to be prepared for the job. The great Hoff himself, David Hasselhoff, once said, luck is nothing but taking advantage of an opportunity. And you have to be ready for that opportunity. So be as prepared as you can with, your back pocket of voice characters, your education, your experience. Read every book you can on voiceover. Take voiceover classes. It's not reading into a mic. It's bringing somebody to life. There we are.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for taking time to speak with me. You're, as always, awesome, Kevin.
Oh, takes one to know one.
And I need to have you on here so we can have Star Trek conversations. I'm so
yes, because then I'll tell the story of how when my acting teacher came in grad school saying, "Hello, class. We might have to meet at Paramount. I have 6 weeks of Star Trek to film."
Oh,
we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
All right, guys. If you would like to sign up for jury duty, hit the subscribe button. If you'd like to know who's next on their bell, hit the notification bell. Until next time, I can't wait for you to approach the nerd. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for watching my video. I really appreciate it, but hey, the party doesn't have to stop now. Click on one of these videos and keep it going.